What's happening, friends? Welcome back for another episode of Waynecast. My name is Rob Johnson. On today's episode, I want to talk about an inventory. What I mean by that is taking an inventory of the things that matter to you. And I want to look at this largely from a business perspective today. There are a lot of business owners that I know, a lot of business owners I've consulted for, and ones that I admire their model. I admire the model and the structure in which they've grown their business. However, there are things that confuse me. There are things that I wonder, how often are people actually thinking about the structure of their business? What typically happens, and I can attest to this because I've been there, is that when you start a business, you get into this position of, well, I'm here, I'm in the game, and things are going well enough. There's no reason to reassess. There's no reason to think about, wow, how could I have done this better? How can we do this differently? And when back in the day when I was doing a show called Rob Talks Money, one of the very first step I had people do when it came to their personal finances was investigate. And that investigation was truly a Sherlock Holmes. We're going to uncover everything under every rock and actually look at what's working, what's not working, what's successful, what's not successful, in order for us to actually fix a problem, and in order for us to actually understand what's actually going on with the business. Now, in business land, different than personal finances, of course, but the concepts are similar. You know, this last year specifically has been a tremendous education for me. And just when I think I'm at a point where I'm like, yeah, things are going great. I have not everything settled, but I have a lot of things settled. I have a lot of things that are working well. I get surprised. And I'm like, wow, something that I thought was such a good concept has now been changed so much into a better concept. I couldn't ever imagine going back to the way we used to do it. I'll give you an example. So we have a meeting here at Wayne Media every Tuesday morning at 9:30 called a traffic meeting. The purpose of the traffic meeting is for all of the project leads to come together and talk about the status of the active projects that we have, whether it's a retainer client or whether it's a project. And during that meeting, what we would do is we would run through every single client that we had and talk about a status update together as a group. Now, initially, when we were a smaller company, that meeting would last 30 to 45 minutes. Over time, as we've grown and we represent over 50 clients now, that meeting has now, at the time, was sometimes an hour and a half. It could stretch into 2 hours. And we had a newer employee that came on board, and one of the unique things that I really like doing when I hire somebody new is I encourage them to critique our processes as they see them. And that might be a weird thing for someone that's new to do, to come into a company and say, wow, I don't really want to be a part of, being critical, being so new here. But for me, it's such a valuable thing because it gives me perspective that an outsider has on things that we can do better. And one of the things this new employee had said to me was, after the traffic meeting, I said, so what do you think of the structure of that meeting? And the two words that I remember, I can't remember the direct quote, but it was like, those meetings are long and they're painful. And the painfulness, I think, derives from us reiterating the same thing repeatedly, to where it's like, well, we're basically reading off of the project update. We use Asana to update our projects every week on Mondays before traffic meetings. On Tuesdays, all the project leads are required to put their update into Asana. And what that meeting turned into was somebody reading the project update verbatim and then us going ahead and discussing it. And looking back at it, like, that sounds like a very thorough way to approach client services. But in actuality, what was happening was we were wasting so much time reiterating things that we could have just read ourselves in our own time. So I thought long and hard about, well, what would it look like if we actually took this process and made it better and made it so it was actually information that was valuable, information that people actually needed to know within the company. And what I discovered was, okay, well, if everyone, all the project leads come to the meeting with what they actually need to talk about rather than a particular client. Instead of running through the clients, we can run through the people at the meeting and say, Tori, do you have an update? Amanda, do you have an update? Chris, do you have an update? And we can go around the horn and we can say, what is critical for you? What do you need to talk about at this meeting? What do you need to have done that has not yet been accomplished in Asana, and how can we help? That completely changed the dynamic of those meetings. And I would say on average, they last about 20 minutes now. So now if there's 10 people at that meeting and we save an hour on a meeting, that's 40 hours of company productivity that we've freed up. Now, when I look at company productivity, I'm not saying that's 40 hours that people can go and invest back in the workforce or the workspace. Like, yeah, of course, that's fine. But more of what I'm talking about is that's 40 hours that somebody can actually go and do what they want in terms of their projects, or leaving early, or being more productive so they can get out for a vacation or whatever it is. That frees up more time for them to do what they need to get done. No matter if that's a home capacity or if that is a work capacity, whatever it is, on an individual basis, that's 4 hours per month that somebody now has back because we're not in those meetings. And that really got me started on this concept of, my background in corporate land was like, if you had a meeting and it was scheduled for an hour, that meeting needs to take an hour, even if you don't have anything to talk about. So people would sit in there and they'd BS and they'd, just talk about things that didn't matter or didn't pertain to that particular meeting. And they would stretch those meetings out to be super long, or as long as they were scheduled for. So I said, well, if we have a 30-minute meeting and it takes 9 minutes, end it. That's it. We're done. Like a great example, today, before I came in here, we had a meeting that was scheduled at 1:00 and it was due to be finished at 1:45, and we were done about 1:20 when the meeting was over. I feel like back in the day, maybe a year ago, we would have taken that time and talked about things that weren't necessarily relevant to that meeting, things that weren't really thought out and planned. And I think this idea of we only need to talk about what's pertinent at the time, one, it puts more responsibility on the project owners to bring in what they need. And it gives them the idea of what they have to say during that meeting is super important. And now everyone is much more engaged in that meeting. Because if everyone's coming to the meeting and everyone feels like the meeting is boring or it's redundant or it's not necessary, what attitude do you think they're going to take when they come in? Well, they're going to be like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. I can't believe we're sitting in here. Like, that's the internal monologue. And that's how I felt sometimes. And I own the company. I felt like, wow, why are we repeating the same thing over and over? But I couldn't figure out how to make it better until someone actually said something to me about it. And that forced me to really think about, well, how could we do it better? What would be a different way to do it? And thus far, it's been good. And I tell you that long version of that story to tell you this, which is there are things that you're doing in your personal life or in your professional life that don't need to be done the way that you're currently doing them. And you can rework them in order for you to save time. And maybe not. Maybe you've done a complete audit and you have, things are as productive as possible. You're working on things as well as you possibly can. But I think for a lot of people, when you look at, this idea of productivity, it's, I need to make the most of every minute. And really it's not that in as much as can you justify what you're spending every minute on? Right. And sometimes that's allocating time to relax. That's budgeting 120 minutes to watch a movie, to decompress. It's budgeting 30 minutes for a walk or 2 hours in the morning for some gym time or for some self-reflection or, prayer time or whatever that might be for you. But the point is, everything that you need to do from a business perspective or from a personal perspective needs to have purpose. There needs to be a why behind it. And sometimes it's okay if that why is, hey, I just need to veg out. I just need to relax. I just need to be a couch potato for a couple hours because I've had an exhausting week and it's time to relax. I can buy that much more than I can, just somebody just laying around aimlessly and not really thinking about how that time factors into their day. And at the beginning of this, I talked about scheduling. I talked about, the purpose of having intentionality behind why we do what we do. And for me, it's a super important thing for businesses to think about, because there are ways that you're doing things that can be better. And not only will they be better for you, not only will they free up more time for you, but they'd free up more time for your people. So every 3 months or so, I look at my calendar, and I have recurring blocks in my calendar, and I'll just kind of share with you some things that I have. And some of these things are things for me. So for example, usually on Mondays, I try and work from home because we don't really have much going on here in the studio. And every morning I have a recurring meeting to meet with my assistant to talk about, things that are going on in the company. We don't hit that meeting every day, but we do a rundown of what we're supposed to be talking about. But that's blocked in there, so we have that time if we need it, and no one can book over it. And then I have internal meetings. But one of my favorite things is I have these free time blocks in my calendar. And that's for me to decide what's the most important for me to be working on. And clients can't book over that time. So for example, on Friday is a day that I don't meet with any clients. Very rarely do I meet with a client on a Friday. And that day is mostly spent on internal meetings, meeting with our web team, our sales team, our content team, our advertising team. And then I have a block of free time. I record Waynecast. If we have a guest that's in studio, I do a client review for an hour, and then I leave early. I try to, at least. Some days, some weeks it doesn't happen, especially in the last couple months that hasn't happened. But it's blocked in there, so when time permits, I'm not budgeted with any commitment or meeting at 4:00 on a Friday that I need to be at. And that's really important for me. So every 3 months or so, I review that calendar and I say, is this meeting still necessary? Is this still relevant? Do I need to be doing this? Is there something I could be doing better? And then, this is the key part, I talk to some of the key leaders on my team and say, is there anything that I can be doing better from a budget perspective in terms of time that would help you with your job? I get that feedback because that's critical, because I might miss things. In my head, I might be doing everything, right. Air quotes there for audio listeners. But really, I might have a team member that's feeling like, man, we really need to meet more on this project. It's being slightly neglected, whatever it might be. I'm not going to know that unless I ask. So it's super important for me to go in there and talk about, whether or not my time is being allocated properly, and we can have that discussion. I feel like time management is something that's talked about at a 30,000 foot view, but it's not done in details. One of my good friends is a client of ours as well, and one of the first things he ever said to me before we had kind of really developed a friendship was, he said, I only take sales meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He's like, that's important to me to know that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going hard in the paint. I'm meeting with clients. I'm out in the field. I'm not in the office, and I'm only doing sales meetings on those days. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is all internal, and each of those days have a different purpose. That was really the first time I've heard somebody articulate their week in a way that was so formatted, and I don't do that. I don't have like this day is for this. The only day that I have that for is Monday. I'm at home, but I'm still working. And Friday is all internal. And that way my team knows there's a day of the week at least that we're going to have together that we can talk about things that are important. And then we have our 2 meetings, one for Speakeasy and one for Wayne Media, company-wide meetings on Tuesdays. One on Tuesday morning, one Tuesday afternoon. That way we can all be in touch on projects and get mission-critical things from each other. But again, I feel like most of the time when we talk about time management, we talk about productivity, it's all at a 30,000 foot view. Like, you need to make the most of your day. Well, what does that look like? How do you do that? So I wanted to do this podcast to give you a little bit of an insight on how I do that. And also, it wouldn't be possible if I didn't have such an incredible team of people behind me. One of the best decisions I've ever made was hiring an assistant to help me work through calendars, external projects, new projects that pop up. And it's been such a tremendous benefit for me that I've freed up so much more time to do more sales, to meet with more clients, to meet with more team members internally. And that is a super valued position for me, as are all of the positions that we have here. And that's another thoughtful interaction of, do you have team members on your team that don't contribute to the mission? Do you have bloatware positions? And for me, every time I think about, well, if we lost this team member, we would lose this amount of productivity. Like, that is an important calculation to know. Everybody on our team is valuable. Everyone contributes to the mission. And sometimes in some businesses, there are positions that are not needed. I forget what it was. It was a stupid sketch. It might've been from Office Space. I can't remember, but basically it was like these two mid-level managers interviewing another manager about like his position, and his position was completely worthless. I've never seen the movie Office Space. Apologies for all the hate mail I'm about to get for that comment. But it seemed like this guy's position was useless, and they kind of knew it was useless, and they were trying to get him to articulate that he was useless. And his job was basically explaining things to clients in a way that software developers can't explain because they're software developers, and that's a super fun cliche. But that whole thing, all that to say is that as companies grow, enough audits aren't performed to see where the most amount of productivity can be garnered. And it's not about, everyone needs to do the work of two people. We need to work super hard. It's just about the justification. Can we assert a positive why statement as to the rationale of this position? And it's just being thoughtful about what you have going on. It's being thoughtful about what you have going on in the company. And those checks, sitting down, doing audits, thinking about employees, how people can be used to the best of their ability, is super important. And they're overlooked a lot, and especially in small businesses. And I believe that's why most small businesses fail. It's not because of lack of money. It's because of lack of direction. It's a lack of vision. It's a lack of why. And I don't want small businesses to be in this position of hurting for capital and also hurting in the vision department. We had a podcast in here today, and it really made me think about something. They had said that 65% of one of their customers' revenue came from, 65% of their business accounted for 5% of their revenue. So they were spending 65% of their time on something that accounted for 5% of their business. And this was discovered during an audit. And the coach said to the client, you need to cut that 65% out of your business because it doesn't factor into your business. And the client said, I can't do that because I need that money. And then the coach responded wisely and said, how much more business could you generate if you had those small, non-profitable projects off your docket? How much more time could you invest in other business owners if you didn't have that 65% of your bandwidth weighing you down? How many more new sales could you go make? How many more projects that you're currently working on that are top tier could you go and give exceptional service on? I always seem to sneeze like right in the middle of a podcast. And I'm not really one for second takes, but it's like, goodness, it's annoying. Sinuses only seem to act up when you're on air and have a camera in front of you. But nonetheless, as we move to close, the point I'm trying to make is being intentional, being thoughtful behind why you're doing what you're doing in your business, right? And after you've cemented a path, don't be afraid to break that cement and forge a new path if you find something that works better. If we were afraid to do that, we would still be having 3 hours worth of meetings every Tuesday instead of what it is now, which is 30 to 45 minutes. Overall productivity on that particular day is up, as are people's moods, because they're not stuck in meetings for 3 hours. People don't like meetings. That might be something that might come as a shock to people that aren't really in a meeting-heavy environment, but I like 8-minute meetings. I like meetings that people prepare for ahead of time. They come and they deliver the facts, and then we're out of there. I want to socialize. I care about the people that are on my team, but I also have work to do, so I don't really want to be stuck in meetings all day long just for the sake of them being scheduled. So hopefully that's helpful for you if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a student looking to go into the business space. Really think about why you're doing things. Think about why you have things on your docket, and then review them frequently. I think that's the best thing any business owner could do, is really establish their why across every single level of their business. And here's the key point, their personal life. Establish a why in every single area of your life, and you'll be better for it. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you on the next one. Take care.